So I'm quite a big fan of Invincible. I haven't talked about season 1 or 2, but I just wrapped up season 3 and I think the final episode is a strong contender for my favourite of the whole show, and I just really want to talk about it. I feel like this show at its core is mostly about being a family drama, which is just set in a backdrop of a world with superpowered people. The cast is incredible. There's just so many talented people voice acting in this. It's insane. You got Stephen Young, J.K. Simmons, Walton Goggins, Sandra Oh, Gillian Jacobs, Jeffrey T. Morgan, and just so many other people that I can't even list them all. The show is based on the comic by Robert Kirkman, creator of The Walking Dead, but I'm sure most of you know this by now, so let's just get into my thoughts of season 3. This is going to be spoiler heavy, as there's a lot that I really want to talk about. So if you haven't watched it, go away. Then go watch it and come back. So I'll start off with my gripes. Again, spoiler warning. If you've not seen this show yet, leave. Trust me. Rex is dead. I like that he went out in a vicious last stand. You know, it wasn't a lame death. But the show is going to be considerably less funny now. He was one of my favourite characters. His greatest line, in my opinion, being in the last episode when he said to Bulletproof,
"Hey! Take your obvious name and get them out of here!"
But seriously though, I feel like we went on the best journey with Rex. From an oblivious, self-centered, know-it-all in season 1, to a retrospective, humbled man in season 2, ending with a self-sacrificing hero with his sarcastic quips right to the end. Damn you, Robert Kirkman, always making me care about people and then killing them off. I did think it was a bit weird and creepy, Rudy saying that his name is Rex now at Rex's funeral, especially as he has his genetic code so he looks just like them, but whatever. A stellar performance from Jason Mantzoukas and a brilliantly written character. Rex, you will be sorely missed. I think the biggest thing that annoyed me in season 3 was Mark. I do feel like he was pissing me off a lot of the time with how much he was having to go at Cecil about doing things that are morally grey when it's like, mate, this is the world that you live in.
And another thing, Vonnegut.
Mark's already done a lot of questionable shit for the greater good, so I just feel like he was being a bit of a hypocrite. Anyway, moving on. There were points in the show to do with Mark and Eve especially where it did feel a little bit like Groundhog Day, particularly in the middle episodes. Lots of conversations about whether they're in the right or the wrong, whether or not they should move in together. I have to admit it did get a bit stale, similar to how I felt about Mark and Amber in the last season. But as the show progressed, these conversations did go somewhere and become quite meaningful. I also think any kind of lovey-dovey mushy moments just kind of make me cringe. Like my reflex is just to mock it, you know? But it's fine. Maybe that's more of a reflection on me than on them. Another issue was that there was nowhere near enough Alan the Alien, Omni-Man, and Battle Beast. What happened on the Viltrumite prison ship was awesome. I did a bit of research into the character Battle Beast, and in the comics, he has almost similar morals to the Predator. His life is battle, and a glorious death is all that he seeks. But this whole season just kind of seemed to be an introduction to Battle Beast and the trio's escape. I was kind of hoping for a little bit. And Nolan is such a complex, layered character that I just really wanted so much more of him on screen. But hopefully in the next season we will get a lot more of him and Alan. My last problem is something that Penguin Z0 brought up, being the animation and background characters. Season 2 had this really breaking the fourth wall with the superhero dog. The creator of the superhero dog comics tells us about the limitations, time constraints, and subsequent tricks used by animators to pad out scenes, and this really shows in this season especially. Particularly compared to season 1, the quality of the animation is definitely worse. One close-up of Dr. Seismic laughing is just a still image. And other scenes with the general public in the background, you'll see people not move or like barely move at all. I get it, Robert Kirkman. You've only got so much time and money, and I'm sure that there's a lot of pressure because the series is performing well to churn out as much stuff as quickly as possible. But it was quite obvious. Don't get me wrong, there's still some good animations and it is still just as gory. Speaking of gore, let's talk about the new antagonist I knew nothing about, Conquest. When he showed up, my husband, who knows a little bit more about the Invincible comics, stated that Conquest is known to be the most sadistic Viltrumite, which for their race of people is really saying something. And I wasn't too sure how that was going to play out, but as the episode progressed, the writers genuinely found new ways to convey his sadism, culminating in Oliver, a literal child, almost getting torn in half, with Conquest looking forward to being covered in his entrails. God. On top of this, right before this happens, Conquest whispers to Mark about how he's lonely and sometimes even nearly cries, but he doesn't because there's nobody in the universe who would care. I'm not saying that I sympathize with him, but that line hit unexpectedly hard. Time and time again throughout this show, Mark has shown that his greatest strength over the Viltrumites is his humanity. Just like Rick from The Walking Dead, you do whatever you have to do to protect or avenge the people that you love, causing Mark to lash out, not like a Viltrumite, but like a desperate human being. We also find out that Atom Eve is also kind of as when she is on the brink of death, her repressed powers kick in and regenerate her body. This is actually a really smart way of not making her too OP and explaining why she couldn't have just snapped Conquest away with a thought. This leads me into fleshing out how a lot of these characters got their superpowers, and it's really quite tragic. Kind of similar to The Boys in a way, a lot of our heroes were sold off to corporations by their own parents to be experimented on. Rex himself saying that he was sold for the price of a steak dinner. And what's more tragic is how casually all of our heroes spoke about their childhood. It's just normal to them. Speaking of tragedy, Powerplex, played by
Jesse,
is the most sympathetic villain yet, with a very dark storyline of one man's descent into sheer madness, unintentionally destroying everything in his life in his pursuit of revenge. Although the writing was on the wall regarding the fate of his wife and child, it was still horrifying when it happened. I also really found his power interesting, the fact that the more that you hit him, the more powerful he became. I just thought that was pretty cool. On a lighter note, it was really nice to finally see Debbie be happy, although I'm sure it won't last too long knowing Kirkman. She is the anchor to Mark and Ollie, keeping them grounded, quite literally in Ollie's case.
What have I said about flying in the house?
Without her, they could quite easily just be another evil variant. I really want her to have a happily ever after. I really do. I just don't think that's going to happen. I think that in the next season, she's going to have more heartbreak, but hopefully not. We'll see. This show from season 1 to season 3 has done a fantastic job so far of making these larger than life characters feel very relatable. There's a lot of storylines, heroes and villains being woven through, and although sometimes it can feel like a bit of a drag, they generally manage to keep it interesting. I'm always particularly invested in the overarching storyline between Mark and his heritage of Viltrumites, a real case of nature versus nurture. I also quite like the soap opera family dynamics, from Mark trying to impress Nolan, Oliver trying to be Nolan, Debbie trying to forget Nolan, and the shame she feels from being so associated with him. And then, like what I said before, Nolan himself, you could do a whole video just talking about him. There really is something that everyone may be able to relate to in this show. And to top it all off, despite it being a cartoon, it has way more kick-ass action scenes than anything Marvel could dream to put out at the moment. I'm really looking forward to season 4, and I look forward to seeing you in my next video. See ya. And regenerate her body. Ugh, why can't I say body? Oh, what's wrong with me? And Jeffrey, oh, do you want to go out, Lucy? Okay. Right, let's try again. Rex, you will be sorely missed. What are you doing?